It's time for the Go Christian podcast, where we equip women church leaders with practical tools to enhance their ministry and personal lives. Join us as we explore productivity, money management, and spiritual growth strategies. Get ready to ignite your passion and impact your community. Welcome to the Go Christian podcast with Reverend Dr. Xeturah Woodley. Hey sis, now in today's episode, we're tackling the topic that can make you feel a little anxious. We're talking about debt and our personal finances. Now, let's face it, finances can be stressful, and sometimes it feels like faith and financial stability are on opposite ends of the spectrum. Managing our personal finances can be a daunting task, especially when we're juggling the demands of ministry. Effective financial management is crucial, not only for our personal well-being, but also our success as ministers. By taking control of our finances, we can focus on what really matters, serving others and fulfilling our calling. So, whether you're struggling with debt, overwhelmed by budgeting, or simply want to be a better steward of your resources, this video is for you. Now, the Bible actually offers a wealth of wisdom on handling money responsibly. Actually, according to Crown Financial Ministries, the Bible contains more than 2,300 verses that discuss money and possessions. Now, for those of you that are interested, I'll leave a link in the description to a free download from Crown itself, from the Crown website, so you can go ahead and download those scriptures that they point to. Now, I will not be going over all 2,300 of them today. Instead, I think the best one for us to talk about is the one from Proverbs 22:7. I'll be reading from the King James Version. Proverbs 22:7 says, "The rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender." Now, I took the Crown Financial Ministries training back in 2011. For those of you that are on YouTube, I'm pulling up, you'll see right now, I pulled up a copy of the Crown website. For those who want to access it at any point, you can go over and find out more about Crown Financial Ministries at crown.org. So I took the Crown Financial Ministries training back in 2011. And I remember learning this scripture, Proverbs 22:7, as one of the scriptures we had to memorize. See, the small group study had homework, and one of the things we had to do is memorize scripture. And then we'd show up at the weekly study sessions and recite the scripture that we studied. Now, out of all of the scriptures, this one stuck with me the most, and it hit me the hardest. See, I didn't think of my mortgage or even my car note as debt. That was just a bill. I didn't want to see myself as being a servant to my bank or to a mortgage company. I wanted to believe that I was only a servant to Christ, and there it was in the Bible in black and white. I was a servant to lenders because I was a borrower. I was a servant to lenders that owned my credit cards, my car note, and even my mortgage. Each of us that took that study had different scriptures that impacted us all in different ways. But Proverbs 22:7 has stayed with me even after all of these years. So last week on the Go Christian podcast, I posted episode 4 about starting a church. I ended with a comment about money being one of the issues that gets ministries in trouble. And as soon as I posted it, I heard that still small voice saying, "Okay, now it's time for you to talk about finances." And that scripture came back to the forefront of my mind. As I started pulling together the script for today's episode, I had to stop a couple of times and take deep breaths. I knew I'd have to reflect on my own journey and where I am with my personal finances. And sis, let me tell you, personal reflection really can be difficult at times. All right, so listen. You know how when you're pulling together a sermon and everything is going along smoothly, And then all of a sudden, you feel convicted. Like suddenly you feel convicted about a behavior that you're demonstrating, and you're writing this sermon about how people should do something, and you're feeling like, but am I in integrity with doing that myself? It kind of hits you in the chest like a personal conviction. You know what I'm talking about? Well, that's what I'm dealing with right now as I speak to you about personal finances. Not because my finances are so far out of integrity, but instead because having to deal with this topic, I had to stop and look at my own personal finances to see where I was in the journey. So, today, we're going to talk solely about personal financial management as it regards debt. In other words, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about how to set up a budget or what percentage of spending you should do in every category. Instead, I'm going to focus solely on debt, on a conversation about debt, because most of us are masterful at handling church finances. See, we keep our finances pristine for the church, but when it comes to our own personal finances, that may be a whole nother story. You know, it's like cleaning, right? You keep the house of God clean, but your own house, well, maybe not so much. Yeah, I'm starting to get another conviction right now. So let's see the reality of it, and let's be honest with ourselves about it. And the reality is this: none of us are perfect. Romans 3:23 puts it like this: for all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. Now get that. All of us have sinned and come short of the glory of God. So Xeturah, as I'm looking at it, where I once was diligent with my personal finances, I can see where I've fallen off track, especially when it comes to paying off debt. Now, has it stopped me from being able to fulfill my calling? I wish I could say a resounding no. But the reality is that yes, it has in some ways. So, for example, I've had to continue working at high paying, stressful jobs that I could have walked away from if I didn't need that money. I needed the money to pay off debt. And it is the debt I incurred for things that I needed to keep those high paying, stressful jobs. Or I needed the money for expensive vacations to get away from those high paying, stressful jobs. Either way, my debts and failure to follow my spending plans consistently have kept me from entering the ministry full time. All right, so that ends the saga, the true confessions from Minister Woodley part of today's episode. But I'm sharing all of my journey with you so that you can know that you are not alone. I know what it's like to get on a journey only to go off track on more than one occasion. I know what it's like to start out with all this energy and zeal only to end up laying down because it all seems like too much. I know what it's like to start on a journey to true financial freedom only to be derailed along the way because I just wanted to buy a Starbucks. But the guilt of buying that one drink put me into a tailspin. I know what it's like, sis. I've been there too. But today, we're both going to take a few minutes and get back on track. All right, so I'm just going to give you really quickly 4 steps that we're both going to take in order to get ourselves back on track. Step 1, identify a program or a process that you will follow. Now, there are so many people and programs and processes out there that you can use. Here are some of the people I've learned from and that I will be using to build my processes and programs so I'm back on track for financial freedom. Crown Financial Ministries and Chuck Bentley's podcast. I love listening to that. The Budget Mom, Kamiko Love. The Budget Girl, Sarah Wilson. Love me some Sarah. Love me some Budget Girl. Susie Orman and Tiffany Aliche, the budgetnista. That's what she calls herself, right? So these are people that are my go-tos. I go to them for most of the strategies and solutions I use for debt reduction. And I also utilize a lot of resources from them when it comes to writing my spending plan. Now, you can choose whomever you feel would be ideal for you to learn from. You want to choose someone as you begin to design what your plan looks like. All right, step number 2, you are going to gather resources. Now, these will be the resources you will need to start again. Maybe it's picking up an author's book or a workbook, a new copy of a workbook, right? Maybe it's getting some pencils and a calculator. Whatever resources that you know you'll need to get started. For me, for example, here's what I'll need. I'll need to print out my budget by paycheck pages. I'll need to get a new spiral notebook to put them in. And I also need to get a new copy of the money map ready to go. I also need to pull out colored pens and pencils as well as all of my stickers. Okay, because I need stickers as a reward if I'm going to make this happen. That's right, I love me some stickers, don't hate. Step 3, use your identified program or process to design your action plan. Now, every victory comes from a plan. Now that you've identified a program and your resources and you've gathered them all together, I want you to write out an action plan. Now, this is a plan about how you will learn about how to use the program or process. The program itself will teach you an action plan on how you can use a budget or spending plan to get out of debt. So that's like with Crown, using the Crown Financial Ministries training, they already teach me about the process, like for 30 days, track your spending, and then write a budget from the 30 days of tracking. Come up with a plan that you can use not only for spending and paying down your debt, but also for saving like that. Here's a tip. A good plan will also help you learn how to save. A true spending plan helps you meet your needs and your wants, and a great plan can even teach you about generous giving. See, that's the reason I always go back to Crown every single time. And finally, step 4, take action. Once you have all of that together, it's time to take action. It's time to get back to work on your personal finances. It's never too late to get started. All right, and that's the first 4 steps we're going to take together. Now, there is so much more I can talk with you about when it comes to finances. You know, I spent 29, almost 30 years working in higher education as a university professor and a community college administrator. Let me tell you though, I'm no longer working in any kind of full-time higher ed executive position anymore. I just physically could not continue to work in those stressful 60-hour plus jobs anymore. And I've spent the last year and a half trying to get off of oxygen. I'll have to share my testimony with you at a later time. But after getting COVID and living through pneumonia, 3 rounds of pneumonia, I ended up being hospitalized and put on oxygen. And this last year and a half that I haven't been working those jobs, I've spent trying to get off of oxygen. Now, having the money for this year and a half to take care of myself and to take time off of work made a huge difference. It allowed me to be able to focus on my health. And God more than provided for me during that time. Well, now I'm building my own business as I regain my health and well-being. I also have the freedom to work in this ministry, and that's why we now have this Go Christian podcast. I am committed to being debt-free and financially independent. Right now, I feel God pushing me to make financial gains so I can stay on track with His ministry. What do you feel Him pushing you to do financially, sis? Let's do it together. And that's it for this episode of the Go Christian podcast. Now, if you have any question about today's episode, please leave them in the comments, or you can email me at info@gochristiancenter.org. You can also feel free to visit us on the web at gochristiancenter.org. May God bless and keep you always. Thanks for listening and have a terrific week. Hey, thanks for tuning into the Go Christian podcast. Remember, small steps lead to significant changes. Now, let's continue to grow together in faith, leadership, and personal enrichment. If you haven't already done so, feel free to subscribe and click the like button. That will tell the algorithm to send this out to other church leaders who may benefit from this conversation. Until next time, keep going, sis. God bless you and have a terrific day.